everyone. My name's Eric Weber.
And I'm Megan Buer.
Welcome to this week's special segment, Kids Connection. Tonight we're going to be taking a more in-depth look at communication disorders.
As many of us do not know, communication disorders are divided into two sections, language and speech. According to ASHA.org, the American Speech and Hearing Association, a person identified with a language disorder has trouble understanding others or sharing their ideas and feelings completely, as opposed to a person with a speech disorder that is unable to produce sounds fluently or correctly and has a problem with his or her voice.
Reporter Melissa Watson is out in the field today on K-State's campus digging up more information. What have you got for us, Melissa?
Well, Eric, I'm here with Dr. Brenda Gosselin, a professional in communication disorders within the speech pathology department here at Kansas State. Dr. Gosselin, would you like to share with us the prevalence of communication disorders within the classroom?
Of course. Actually, one thing to know first off is that most kids by the age of 8 actually develop their English language, and so any communication disorders are actually found quite early on in their education. So something that's actually not known by a lot of people is that 95% of these kids are actually taught within the general education classroom.
Now, you mentioned that these can be detected early on within the classroom. How can communication disorders be found early on?
Well, there's a variety of different things we actually look at. Some of the main ones that we look at are a person's voice quality, and some other ones are like speech fluency. We look at speech impediments like stuttering or slurring, and then we also look at if they can pronounce their R's or if they pronounce them as W's.
Well, it sounds like it could be hard to detect a communication disorder since there are no concrete academic impairments. How would you suggest testing for a communication disorder?
Well, there's actually two different types of tests out there. You can test for both speech or you can test for language. With the speech, you actually would use the Goldman-Fristow test of articulation, which includes looking for both speech fluency and voice quality. The language is a little bit more difficult because you're looking at 4 things. You're looking at semantics, syntax, phonology, and pragmatics. And it has actually 3 different tests of language.
Okay, well, thank you, Dr. Gosselin, for being here with us today and sharing your knowledge on communication disorders. Back to you, Megan and Eric.
Thank you to Dr. Gosselin for that valuable information.
Well, as mentioned by a professional out in the field, we can all see that it will be very hard to reach out to these students in the classroom. We are now going back out to Melissa, who is with this teacher, to give us a few ideas of how to best teach these students within the class.
Thank you, Megan. I am now here with Mrs. Brenda Copeland to tell us more. Mrs. Copeland, what are some effective classroom strategies you have found in working with children with communication disorders?
Praise your kids. Give them some positive reinforcement in the classroom. That's always a good way to go. Another one to do is to really try and get them to communicate more in the classroom. Give them positive reinforcement when they try to, encourage it. Also to get students to respect each other from their end to the other students and the other students to their end. Also, some other ones you could do are modeling vocal development yourself and modifying language in the classroom and really listening to your kids when they're talking to you.
Those sound like some great ideas for general education classrooms. What are some specific tips towards curriculum that you suggest implementing?
Well, I also find it beneficial to allow students a little bit more time if they need it. And I also let them tape lectures if they need to, so that they can play them back later on in the day. And when absolutely necessary, sometimes I will adapt a assignment for them so that they can do the same kind of objectives, but in a different way.
Okay, well, thank you for joining us, Mrs. Copeland. Now back to the studio.
Thanks again, Melissa. Well, that's all we have for today on communication disorders. Please join us for next week's segment of Kids Connection as we look into the school bond issue.
Is your milkman stealing your dog? Find out next after the break.
Okay. I think
It sounds like testing can be hard since there are no concrete academic impairments. How would you suggest testing for communication?
go for it.
Well, it sounds like communication disorders can be harder to test.
Go for it.
Well, it sounds like testing can be hard since there are no concrete academic impairments. How would you suggest?
It's perfect.
Good evening, Eric Weber. Okay.
You guys down here, robot.
Language. According to ASHA.org, the American.
It's so scripted.
No.
Okay, now
Reach out and teach these students.
You made a goofy face at the end, and you know because you weren't students.
It's in the classroom.
Was that?
Thanks again, Melissa. Your name is Melissa.
Yeah, that is
Megan.
her,
I
yes.
almost said Megan. Okay. Are we ready? I'm ready whenever you guys are.
After the break. Oh shit, that's wrong. After the break. Oh shit, that's wrong.
Maybe if you drop a few S-bombs.
Go for it.
Thank you, Megan. I am not here with Dr. Nope. Well, those sound like some great tips for general education classrooms. What are some specific tips?
Let's just use the same word over and over again.
Good evening, Eric. Okay, we're done with the intro though, so let's redo this. Good evening, everyone. My name's Eric Weber.
And I'm Megan Buer.
Welcome to this week's special segment on Kids Connection. Today we're going to be taking a more in-depth look at communication disorders. And mundane, like, please join us for next week's segment of Kids Connection when we look into the school bond issue.
And please stay tuned after the break when we look into, is your milkman taking Find out what's happening in Manhattan.
You gotta invert it though. You gotta say, just go look straight at the camera and say, is your milkman stealing your dog? Find out after the break. And then it's gonna, then we'll have to do